Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon, and I am not here with Geeky Sparkles. She's actually sitting this video out. A couple reasons. One, she's doing some Christmas stuff, and two, I don't think she really cares about DC Comics all that much. So we're gonna talk about DC Comics and the announcement a couple days ago that they're reducing its publishing output, right? DC Comics is clearly in the end game right now. I know a lot of comic book pundits were pushing back against the naysayers on YouTube and other places, saying that DC Comics was not long for this world. And in its current incarnation as a publisher of monthly superhero comics, it probably is not long for this world. In fact, it looks like they're sharply cutting their output beginning next year. And this is after massive layoffs. We've been talking about this in relation to the situation with WarnerMedia. AT&T is cutting everything they can cut at this point to try to make WarnerMedia profitable. They're betting heavy on HBO Max, and it does not seem to be taking off as well as they'd hoped. And as that continues to happen, if HBO Max continues to misfire, expect more cuts from AT&T, because they don't give a shit about any of these characters. They don't care about the history of DC Comics. They don't care about your cartoon shows. They don't care. They're a giant telecom company that was a notorious penny pincher when times were good and times are not good right now. So we'll talk about the DC Comics situation, and then I also want to touch base on kind of what's going on with AT&T in general, that a lot of these companies dip into entertainment thinking it's a quick buck, and it turns out that it's much more complicated than they think. They don't understand the entertainment industry, and especially during the pandemic. Nobody understands what's going on during the pandemic. So before we get into it, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We're over 160,000 subs. Thank you so much for the support. And we have about a day and a half left on the Clownfish TV pin pack. There's no guarantee that you will be able to get Clownfish TV pins after the campaign ends. Go to shopclownfish.com and it'll take you to the pins. We also have, I think we've got like 10 of these Bubbly Steve pins left, as well as some holiday merch and some other stuff. Hats and hoodies and all kinds of Clownfish stuff, and look for more Clownfish merch next year. Again, we don't have a Patreon or anything like that. If you want to support us, buying our stuff is the best way to go, and you actually get something in return. So it's kind of a win-win, right? All right, so comic book resources. Talked about this the other day. DC to reduce its publishing output in March, and Cosmic Book News put some info out there too, saying that there's no more Aquaman. So we heard that DC was going to pare back on its line after the Future State event, right? That they were gonna pull back, but we thought they'd focus on the core characters that were in the comics. But apparently Aquaman's getting the boot too, which is crazy. So here we go. DC released its March 2021 solicitations, which reveal the number of ongoing titles being published, and it's noticeably less than in months prior. The March 2021 solicitations show a significant drop in the number of titles being published. By the end of December, DC will have published 51 shots, miniseries, or ongoing titles across the main DC universe and Black Label for a month, including several Dark Knight, Death Metal, and Endless Winter tie-ins. In February, during Future State, that number drops down to 40. Both of these counts include several double shipping titles, a scheduling tactic DC has been utilizing for several years now. However, in March, DC is only publishing 34 single issues, down from the new 52. Notably, DC recently canceled such titles as Supergirl and Aquaman, while others like Harley Quinn and Suicide Squad are set to relaunch in March. DC is also teasing additional announcements in the coming weeks, so it stands to reason that even more could return. Finally, it's worth noting that there are a number of titles in March that are oversized and include backup stories, including some anthologies, and there are some characters on the cover of Infinite Frontier Zero, like Stargirl and Calvin Ellis, who don't have ongoing series yet. Ahead of the solicitations, DC announced new creative teams for titles such as Action Comics and Superman, Nightwing and The Flash, And we know that the writer of I Am Not Starfire is apparently taking over Batman. So, look, DC has an increased focus on this kind of stuff right now. And I think it's all a Hail Mary pass. They don't know what to do. The direct market is shrinking. AT&T is screaming at them to make money. They're trying to justify their existence. They're cutting loose a bunch of people, longtime editors. The person they have running DC Comics right now, I think it's Daniel Cherry, is from esports. And he's an outspoken activist. So we know how that's probably going to play out, right? And the kind of content they produce. They're going to definitely be chasing a different demographic, as we can see with some of these graphic novels. We've been relaying negative DC Comics news for months. And it's not just us. A lot of other YouTube channels have been talking about it, including Ethan Van Sciver's, who, he used to work for DC. He kind of had the inside track on it. But I'm surprised that DC has effectively fallen before Marvel Comics. Now, I think 2021 might be the year that Marvel Comics falls, because Disney's running out of money, and they're in a very similar situation with their stuff as AT&T is with Warner. The difference is Disney understands the long game. They get that, like, okay, we make comics or whatever today, 10 years from now, we might be able to mine some of the stuff for, a TV show or something. So it might be worth keeping these guys around a little bit longer. But if you look at what's going on with AT&T, they're very impatient. They want results right now. This was put out there yesterday on Seeking Alpha, which is a business site. And they were talking about the WarnerMedia management reshuffles. And they basically said that AT&T doesn't understand the entertainment industry. They don't understand all the, I guess, moving parts that have to work. And they were already kind of about things before the pandemic. Now the pandemic has happened. They're sort of having, throwing things overboard, throwing people overboard, trying to make this thing make money. They don't think about the long-term plan. Like, oh, we make comic books today. 10 years from now, we might have $1 billion movie, or we might have a successful streaming show. They're just like, what are you doing for me this quarter? It was really interesting to read this. You can go check it out at seekingalpha.com. But they talk about the Warner Gambit. They said many large companies operating in industries far afield from entertainment, we're talking about AT&T too, including Sony in the early 90s, Seagram in the mid 90s, and Vivendi in the early 2000s, and Six Sigma General Electric circa 2010, have been mightily attracted to movies, television, and music. They think it's instant money. They think it's a cash grab. They think they can go in and they see these $1 billion movies. They see how successful video games are, or whatever. So they go buy up these companies, thinking that that's their shortcut to getting rich. And it doesn't work that way. Virtually all of these companies that were not entertainment entities that bought entertainment companies have, to some degree or another, been unable to understand and to profitably manage these businesses. AT&T appears to be on track to experience the same fate. It's just that the mindset in entertainment is not only different than many other industries, but that success here depends on long-standing close relationships and cooperation. Yeah, this is not a turnkey business. You don't just go buy WarnerMedia and it just starts printing money. There's a lot of things going on here, and you see a lot of the decisions that they're making in regards to HBO Max. They thought, well, we'll buy WarnerMedia, we'll have our own Netflix, we'll make as much money as Netflix, and it'll happen like next month. Like, we're just going to be printing money, just like Disney, just like Netflix, and it's not working out for them very well. HBO Max is very slowly gaining traction. Now, I like HBO Max. I think it's one of the best Netflix competitors out there. I actually prefer it to Disney Plus, but the numbers don't lie. It's not pulling in people like the other streaming services are. So they're talking about this. They're just like, it's not going to be a home run right out of the gate, and they don't have the patience to wait. They're not going to wait 10 years for WarnerMedia to get its shit back together again. You know, and it could be 5 years from now, it could be 10 years from now, and the talent will move on to other networks because they're tired of dealing with Warner. And we're seeing it. We're seeing directors slam Warner right now. And again, you know, this might blow up into a situation where, you know, AT&T is just like, none of this is worth it. You know, it's not worth the hassle. We can just sell people phones and it makes a hell of a lot more money. It's a hell of a lot easier. You know, they're betting heavy on their tentpoles, superhero tentpoles. Wonder Woman's bombing in China. It's not doing well. That has nothing to do with the pandemic because the Chinese box office is open. But apparently, there is another local Chinese movie, a Chinese produced movie that's bitch slapping Wonder Woman. You know, and this is going to happen more and more. It looks like China is creating its own entertainment at this point. We talk about this with animation. You see it in video games, obviously, and now they've learned from Hollywood, using Hollywood money to make their own blockbusters that appeal to China. We saw Disney bet on China and lost with Mulan, and now Wonder Woman, which is a superhero movie, should do well in China. It's not doing well. They're watching their own movies. So, you know, expect DC Comics to pull back even more. You know, just a couple of months ago, I mean, just to recap everything that's gone on with DC, they went from everything's fine to Dan DiDio gets gone, right? And then everything's up in the air. And then the pandemic happens, and then Diamond decides they want to shut down, which effectively turns off the water to all the comic shops. So DC, because they have to make money, or AT&T is going to, you know, cut them loose or whatever, they form alliances with other distributors, and they said that it was successful, but it wasn't successful enough. I mean, look at this. Just like, hey, you know, things were fine. We're doing our own thing. We don't need Diamond to, hey, look, there's a round of layoffs. Here's another round of layoffs. You know, now we're going to do this Starfire thing that's nobody wants. That's going to work for us. Garbage, absolute garbage. The only 2 comments on this preview on Screen Rant. Nobody wants this. But yeah, Aquaman is getting canceled. And I think that when it's all said and done, if they continue to publish monthly superhero comics, it's probably just going to be like Justice League, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, you know, the big characters. We might not have the B-listers like Aquaman, Green Lantern. You know, you're not going to get, you know, Dr. Fate or anything like that. It's just going to be whatever they think is going to sell the best, because they can't afford to not sell comics at this point, because AT&T is definitely sharpening the axe. It's going to be really interesting to see where DC is next year, for sure. Going to wrap this one up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, and we'll talk later.